The Hangout is live. I'm going to close my stupid thing.
This
to be here. Just a couple first things. Hello, welcome. I'm Sarah, Eisenstein, in case you don't know. PTA president. We have a lot of stuff going on in the next month or two. So I'm gonna bring some of it up now. PTA membership contest, if you haven't signed up.
Don't let anyone
Sign
eat
up tonight. You have all the way through to the end of November. The class that wins gets the most members signed up. Their class gets a pizza party, and then we have like a snack party and then free pretzels. So there's 3 prizes. So sign up. It's only $20. You get your brand new Brigham pin, which I got $100 for here, and you give up party. We're doing a faculty party on December 4th for your faculty. I sent an email out a little bit ago. We're trying to get, we don't have a sunshine, we're betting more than you said, come up with a little bit of money for this party. We don't have that anymore, so I was asking if the PTA families would like to donate $1, $5, $50, whatever you have, to go towards the party. That way we can let them have some cocktails and maybe get some gift cards that have some prizes and say thank you for all that they do. And I've got a couple donations, but I think really use a little bit more, so if you think about it, it would be awesome. And in December, we have our parent-teacher conferences on the 23rd. We feed the teachers that day. We call it Teachers Are Super. So in the cafeteria, we have chili and soup and bread and salads all donated by you guys. So think about it just in your head. You'll get a bunch of information on it. But they really need you guys to bring the food, and it's wonderful. And they're very appreciative. And the bowling grill, you might have gotten some information on. Every January, it's a great event. So I'm so tired today. I'm like fall over. It's a wonderful event. We do it out in sort of Roxborough. It's a really neat little bowling alley. It's a way to raise funds. The kids get to throw bowling balls all over the place. I think the guy that owns this bowling alley every year is not going to invite us back, but he does. We have a chili contest. I think there's some home brew involved usually. It's just a way to hang out, have some fun, eat, play, get the kids together and play. And we raise quite a bit of money with it. So Francine Donato has traditionally run the event. She's looking for some help in running the event. She's been a little busy herself. So if you think you might be interested, it's sort of been a Mount Airy-based community event, but anybody can join in and help. So if you think you'd be great at soliciting donations or organizing volunteers or just finding what Francine might need, you can email PTA, address it as Golden Rue, and I'll pass it over to Francine to get.
You have a date?
No, that's what it's usually in January. She needs help getting it started. So we're looking for sort of some team leaders who might want to help her run the event, and then we'll be able to, get a date to check it out. And that's about it for me, all my events. Can you hear us, whoever's on the phone?
Yes.
Okay, good. If you have any questions, feel free to chime in too. So we're going to get into the meeting. I have Principal Kristen here. She's going to do a brief little discussion or tell you a little bit about PSSAs. A lot of people had asked. If you don't really care about it, it can be really brief. If you had a question, you could ask it, but we just want to keep it quick and short and get into the Common Core. Krista Pfeiffer is going to do our presentation for that, and Teacher Kaisa, I don't know if any of you know, is going to help out in there too. And we'll give the presentation. We'll do some some math problems, and any questions, and raise your hand, ask, get involved. It's going to be really fun.
You want me to do sort of a board update?
That would be wonderful. You want to do that? You want to do that now, real quick?
Can we do it right now?
Yeah, that way we can just get moving on it.
Mark, do you need me to stand?
No.
I don't know if she can hear.
Oh,
Yeah. We have somebody here.
hi, I'm Ashley Tobin. I'm one of 2 parent-elected board representatives, and wanted to give you just a quick update on a couple different pieces of information. Number one, at the December board meeting, the board is going to vote on the strategic plan. It was presented in the spring to the board and has been documented in some of the minutes, so you should be able to find that information online. If you want, I can go through some of the key strategic priorities, if that would be helpful to you. And I also want to talk about some fundraising things that are going on. So do you want me to talk about the strategic plan in detail? No? Okay.
I did put The handout that was available, it's
Yeah.
available on the PTA website.
Great, so the handout that goes into more
Yeah.
detail is on the PTA website where you can read more about it. It's a good plan, and I'm hopeful, and I hope and expect that the board will approve it at the December meeting. So next up, the fundraising piece. You may know that there were a lot of parents who got very excited about fundraising last spring, and there's a core group of them. We are now able to plug parents into this activity. Our fundraising program, it's called a Benabon model. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it. It's a structured way of fundraising where there are introductory sessions that are about the school, that are held throughout the school year, and anybody is invited to participate in these. It's a great tour of the school. You go into classrooms and hear more about the school. I have invited, 20, 25 people to attend, and a good number of them have already come through, and they've been really impressed with the school. And we're hopeful that they will become future donors. There is no ask for money at these events. It is just an introductory event. So if you or somebody you know might be interested in attending these, please register for them. They're listed on the calendar on the website. And I'm going to give you the dates if you're interested in signing up. The next one is January 20th, February 23rd, March 9th, April 5th, May 10th, and June 30th. They're all held at 8:45 in the morning. Again, everybody's invited. On the calendar entry on the website is an email registration link. And we encourage all parents to invite extended family, friends, neighbors, and other people that you think might be interested in the school and might be interested in being donors for the extra activities that we do here at ICS for our students. Any questions?
Okay, thanks, Kristen.
You want, are we supposed to see the video? Does it
Well,
not matter?
because we have someone here, so they can hear. I'm the camera.
So I'll just start with some basics, and then kind of based on crowd interests, I can give you more information. Last year, the PSSAs was administered to our 3rd through 8th grade students. So that's nothing new. But this was the first time that the PSSA test was fully aligned to the Common Core state standards. So the test was much more rigorous. And this is something that you've seen throughout the country, where one year, the year that they're giving the test that's completely aligned to the Common Core, you see a big drop in scores. So that's something that happened to ICS, that happened to the state as well. But that does not mean that your students are learning less or that they're not doing as well as they were before. We expect to see continual growth throughout the year as they become more familiar with the test, as students who are, in the younger grades when they're exposed to the Common Core from kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, of course, that's going to impact how they're performing in 4th and 5th. Let's see, also, as far as we're concerned, it's definitely not the sole indicator of a child's academic achievement. So we have multiple measures here. I would definitely trust your teacher's communication and how they're saying that your children are doing. This shows how they do on a standardized test, and it is an indicator of, to some degree, of their achievement, but it's definitely not the only thing. And a lot of it is how good are you at taking the test. And then other questions surrounding, how does this affect high school? So it was especially worrisome for 7th grade parents this year because all of a sudden scores dropped and now they had high schools to apply to. But Counselor Ann, who organizes and meets with parents for the high school application process, said that the high schools are looking at their percentile rank on the PSSA. So they're looking, what that means is it doesn't matter if it says below basic, basic, proficient, advanced, or what that number is. It's just how that child did compared to other students in Philadelphia. So even if you go from advanced to proficient, that might not mean anything if they're still performing better than me. Okay. So from there, are there any questions? Yes.
Definitely offers some clarity. I got his results that I was a little concerned in one area, and I presented that question to a staff member. And it was just like, well, there was an overall drop in scores throughout the city. And I'm like, That's not answering my,
I
that's not
know,
answering
and the
my
hard
question.
part is we're learning along, it's not like the state is really great at giving us a lot of advance notice for the staff members themselves to become really knowledgeable about what's happening. So I think more staff members are more knowledgeable as the months have gone by, but when it was released, it was kind of new to everyone.
Yeah.
So
But I know you said it aligns more with the Common Core now, but is the school doing anything specifically for the, you know, for the children? I know they do have the 21st century, but I'm not sure if they're directly focusing in on it.
yeah, I mean, our math curriculum, and that's something, so all of this ties together, but Krista's gonna be going over the Common Core and what that means, and our math curriculum in K-5, we've been making a transition over the last couple of years to completely go to investigations, which is aligned with the Common Core. Teacher Kaisa over here is our math coordinator along with Teacher Barb, and we're gonna have math nights for parents where they can become familiar with the curriculum and do some activities. So that's a big push in regard to math. In regard to reading, our third grade did better than they've ever done any of our other third grades. So, you know, reading is reading. We are doing more nonfiction, teaching more about close reading and things like that, but we're seeing not, just like most schools, we're not seeing a huge discrepancy in what was before and after. In math, there was a huge discrepancy. And then just at the board meeting last week, there was approval to release some achievement gap funds. So we're in the process of hiring some tutors, more reading intervention curriculum, and assistants for third grade. So there's a lot going on. Any other questions? We'll take it, because this is much more interesting. Yes, yes.
So she wants to know if this pizza place for this 2021 is part of the homework mandatory to be done with it, or will you give it much?
That is an advanced question that I would definitely ask him. I can ask him and I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but we'll get back to you. Okay?
I would also say, just because I do 20%, right, and sometimes someone isn't done, sometimes there's not somebody there helping with Spanish homework, and you can email them and say, I need to send them. We do have that line.
Now we're gonna, no more questions? We will hand it over to Krista and I'll pull up your.
Okay.
Oh, it was, sorry. Was there? Yeah.
She just asked me, her daughter just graduated last year,
Mhm.
and she wanted to know if you guys think that her as a community service to help this Spanish speaking class. Like,
Sure.
all the teachers, all the teachers.
So she's a high school student that needs community service hours? Yes, she would just have to contact the front office first and then they see if there's a teacher available.
Hi, everybody. I'm Krista Pfeiffer, and just a quick introduction. I am a parent of 2 ICS students. I'm also a former teacher, but by former, I mean 9 years ago, I was a teacher, and so basically, like, not at all, right? So I did not teach using Common Core, but I do have some experience, some background in teaching. Currently, I work for a national nonprofit in education reform, and we work specifically to improve outcomes for high needs students through effective teaching. So we do lots of work to either bring new people to the profession, train existing teachers, or provide coaching support for teachers to help ultimately improve outcomes for students. And so I'm coming tonight because in my own work, I received some training around Common Core that really helped me understand what some of these shifts were about. And I am a total convert, and I now love Common Core. And so we're not going to get an unbiased opinion tonight. If you want an unbiased opinion, seek elsewhere. But I have found the more that I learn about it, the more I really support it and believe that it is really exceptional for our kids and really for our country. But there is a lot of literature available about it, so I do encourage you to learn as much on your own as you can and find some additional sources. The handout in front of you has on the reverse side a bunch of internet links, and so it's going to be sent out electronically as well. But in those links, there are a couple of videos that just give overviews of why Common Core was created and who created it and what its purpose is, and as well as a few other articles that just kind of highlight some of the benefits or some of the ways that it can play out in your classrooms. One thing I want to add to what Crystal was saying about testing is just to highlight that testing is something that's been around for a long time. No Child Left Behind was the act of 2001 that was the renewal of the ESEA, the Elementary Secondary Education Act, which is the federal mandate that says like what kids need to do in order to complete their schooling. And it was No Child Left Behind renewal of that act that said we're going to measure progress based on test results. And so testing is something that's mandated by this federal act, but since we're always giving these tests and now we're using Common Core standards to determine what kids should be learning, the two things are now aligned. So that when kids are being tested, they're being tested on what they're being taught. We good? Okay, so what I want you guys to do tonight is get familiar with what some of Common Core looks like. And we're going to focus tonight on math. And most of the reason we're focusing on math is one, that seems to be the thing that most people grapple with, like most adults grapple with their kids doing at school, because it looks and feels a little bit different than what you may have done as a student. And another reason I'm showing it is because it's a little bit quicker and easier to like go through a math problem than it is to like, hey, read a complex test and talk about it. So just because of the forum tonight, it made a little more sense to go math. But I'm happy to answer my research questions and talk about that as much as I can as well. So to start us off, in front of you is a math sheet or a sheet with 3 word problems. So I'm going to take about 6 minutes to go. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Is this a race?
It's a race, and you are the answers count. You're going on your final permanent record. These are 6th grade level math problems. Do your best, and you don't have to show your answers to anybody, but we are going to talk about them. I want you to go through the process. So 6 minutes starting now.
Do you have a shotgun? Oh, yeah.
Sorry, that would have been.
Okay, but we're broadcasting this so people can see, and they won't want them to see this, okay? We do have a viewer. Sorry for our viewer that we don't have the handout available for you. Yeah, they see that, but they don't have all 3 of them.
I can forward.
No, it's all right. It's just, I'll post them all online. Hold it up. They're at home. They're not doing this. I just went through and said how I would do it. I don't have a pencil.
You got further than me.
Yeah.
I just had anxiety attack.
Kristen, do we do all of them or just one?
Try to do them all. We're gonna spend some time on each, and so get as far as you can. I love the different responses.
Need a calculator. Can I put it in the spreadsheet?
You can take one more minute.
The next one involves algebra. The next one involves like three dimensions. So that's when people
Please take a couple seconds to wrap up.
You're not simulating a true test experience because you didn't say like pencils down.
I'm not attempting, and it's not a test, Marcus. It's just regular old sixth grade problem. All right, so what's your reaction? How did that feel to take those problems? Let's get back to going through the work now.
Okay.
So who can share out just their general response? How did it feel to put on? Not loving it?
No.
Did anybody enjoy this experience? Yes. All right. Anyone who this was like the worst thing in the world, you now hate me. Okay. Hopefully some of you must be out somewhere between. So we're gonna do now is we're gonna go through each of these problems and talk about how or different ways to approach them through using Common Core and what are the important things of doing it in Common Core. So for the first one, here's a problem again with a possible solution. So this is using unit rate. You find out how much a small costs per ounce by doing the math. You're just dividing $3.87 by 48 ounces. And you figure out the small is about 8 cents an ounce. Do the same math for the large. You figure out, oh, large is only about 5 cents an ounce, so the large is a better value. Raise your hand if you did it that way. We'll figure out raise your hand if you attempted to do it that way, maybe you were not successful.
I thought about dividing, but I didn't go any further.
Gotcha. So this is, if you went to school in a generation like I did, you probably learned to do it this way. You were probably studying this sort of formula, and then you were given this problem, and most likely you were told, find out how much this costs per ounce, and maybe you're then asked, which is a better value. But definitely the question would include like honing in on the amount per ounce, because that's what's the important thing. But really, in the real world, if you're in the grocery store and you have 2 different items, do you need to know how much per ounce that ice cream or like that bag of chocolate chips costs? Or do you just need to know which one is a better value? So a different way of approaching this problem is something that is broader and using more mathematical thinking and understanding would be to approach it more like this. And this is not like the right answer or the only approach, but here's another way of thinking about it that's not based on plugging in a formula, but is more about thinking more about the mathematical understanding. So you determine, okay, a small is 48 ounces, it costs this much. A large is 128 ounces, costs this much. I know that 40 is like almost 50, and so this is about, the middle is about 2.5 times, or I'm sorry, the large is about 2.5 times the size of the small. So let me figure out how much this middle would cost. If I had 96 ounces, it would cost $7.74. So that was
You have to do it.
multiplying, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
You're buying 2 little ones for
Thank
more
you.
than-
I was like, where did I go?
Little ones, it'll cost more than if I buy one big one.
A for me for presentation. Yes. So you figure out, okay, if I buy 2 little ones, it costs me $7.74, but I'm not getting as much as I am in this bigger one that's $6.42. So I can tell you right there, like, oh, this is definitely a better value because I'm getting more than I am at small ones. So it's the same way of getting to the end result of understanding the value, but it's not about just plugging in a formula. Because the problem with the formula is, A, you need to know the formula. B, you need to remember the formula.
all do in the supermarket.
Right? This is how you
do
live.
that all the
time. So what do you do this way? Do you do this first way?
I do it second
You do the second way, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how you use math in your life, right? Like that's, you have the mathematical understanding. And so getting bogged down with knowing the formula, plugging in the formula, doing the formula correctly, getting the right, very specific answer every time, it uses a part of your mathematical thinking for sure, but it's reliant on so many things, and it develops the sense that to solve anything, I need to know which formula and how to use the formula. But instead, if you have this deeper understanding of like how numbers relate to each other, you're able to approach it a different way, and in a way that makes more sense, is more intuitive and more comfortable, and translates to more things. So this is when you're shopping, this can be in your work, you know, and there's plenty of ways of just understanding how these numbers relate. You can, you know, be more at ease with figuring it out.
So it's approximation,
Well,
right?
I mean, approximation is part of it.
It's a big part of, and I'll talk more specifically too about the investigations curriculum we use. A lot of, it's built upon the kids initially doing it via approximations, so that they know when they do the actual math that their answer is reasonable based on the approximation they made at the beginning of the problem. So it has a lot to do with these real world context things. So that the approximation definitely plays a really big factor into it, because we want the kids to estimate and think when they get that final answer, well, was that reasonable based on my estimation?
And estimation is developing number sense, right? It's understanding how numbers relate to each other. And so that is a skill that will translate in every grade, in every work you do. Whereas a formula, you can probably look up if you need to. You know, like it's good to know the formulas and know how to use them. But if you're relying only on memorizing formulas and using them, you're not developing that same number sense that allows you to just apply mathematics freely. Let's take a look at numbers. Any questions about this? How are you feeling now? Ooh, I got a thumbs up. I got a quick thumbs up over there. Good. All right. Let's take a look at number 2. So this is the pizza, and we had 3 pizzas. All right, we wound up with 15 pizzas. So how many kids? So let me see a thumbs up, middle, thumbs down if this one was easier to solve and you felt good about it. Thumbs up, a couple wishy-washy, and then another. Okay, so all over the place again. So let's take a look at a couple of different ways to respond to this one.
I'm good with that.
So here is a plug in a formula kind of way. It's working with ratios. So we know that 4 pizzas for 3 kids?
Yep.
4 kids for 3 pizzas.
4 kids for 3
Oh,
pizzas.
sorry, thank you. 4 kids for 3 pizzas equals something, the variable x for 15. Now, raise your hand. When was the last time you cross multiplied? Just because because.
Pretty recently.
Not even in your class, but,
Yeah.
so you cross multiply in your work lot?
Not in work. I use it more like in life to solve problems. Or like when I'm building stuff or working things around the house.
Okay.
When you compare things.
When you compare
What?
things, when you're doing stuff like this.
Okay.
Exactly.
So you cross, okay. So I'm not knocking it, like we all learned how to cross multiply, right? Cross multiplying can happen. I personally do not.
Don't condone it.
I'm not slamming cross multiplication.
Sounds like you are.
But you definitely you can figure this out through a formula and cross multiplication. Another approach, which does not include cross multiplication, is figuring out the ratios by understanding the relationship between the 4 and the 3. So knowing that 4 students for 3 pizzas, and you have to get yourself to 15, you can start to figure out, okay, what are the ratios that get me there? So 3 to 15, I happen to know, because I know my multiplication factor very well, that 3 times 5 equals 15. So if I get myself up to 15, I can then take the 4 and get that up to 20, because 3 times 5 equals 15, 4 times 5 equals 20. So understanding, I can then tell you how many pizzas you need for any number of kids. And again, this is just working it out through a visualization instead of plugging in a formula. I just want to make sure I said everything I want to say. Anything that stands out to you for this problem?
I was just gonna say, I don't mind making one thing that I don't like about bullet points that are getting kind of tricky, because I think I'm pretty good at math, but even me, I kind of read it, and when I first read it, because Justin was named, and then 3. So in my mind, I'm like, 7 of them got 6 pieces.
Yep.
And then I'm like, oh, wait a second. Maybe it's just me.
Oh, because it was Justin and 3
Like,
friends.
forget to count Justin.
Yep.
So it's
Gotta read
like, I'm like,
carefully.
okay, there's 3,
Test-taking
and then
skill.
4 more show up, so
Yes.
there's 7 kids.
I
7
think
kids, 6 pizzas.
That's a
But then,
good point.
but then I got thrown off by the even amount. And I'm like,
So,
but that happens in word problems.
does the format like
They're like
completely?
accidental.
Can I just respond to that, and then I'll take the question to that?
Because you see the number 3.
Yes, well, I think that's a great point, because either in this problem or one of the other, I think the next problem, it uses some numerals and some words.
Yeah, this one does.
And, okay, I don't see it offhand, but, so it's the same exact thing, where like you are required to read this and think it through and understand what it's asking you. And that's huge in any problem you're gonna face, right, to make sure you understand all the components. And so I think that's a very classic like word problem situation, because a lot of kids just look like, oh, I see the number 3, I see the number 6, I see the number 15, I'm gonna do something with those numbers. And for us, at least I'll speak for myself, it's like, which formula do I plug them into, right? And so the idea here is really stop and think, what is it asking you? What is the situation? And then do the work from there.
And that is a big part when we talk about the PSSAs, and like, when you look at some of the 7th and 8th grade problems, it's crazy and it's so easy. So the wording just in and of itself is hard for kids to figure out. And that can be really frustrating for teachers too, and students. Like, just figuring out what they're asking is a huge piece of getting the problem right, obviously.
So I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Is the PSSA a strictly multiple choice where you don't get to show your work?
There's a mixture, so on math, there's some days where it's just multiple choice. And then there's some days with a mixture of multiple choice and open-ended where they have the opportunity to show their work and show their
It's
thing.
much more open-ended now.
Right.
So if you had an open-ended question like this and you did make the mistake where you misinterpreted who was originally there, and you showed the work and the way you got there made sense, but you just came up with the wrong answer, you get a partial credit?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the big thing we're emphasizing with the kids with the curriculum. I think we're also going to see over the next couple of years, because as Chris has alluded to, we have K through 5 have fully adopted the investigations curriculum. It's only our 2nd year where we fully implemented it. In previous years, it was used here and there. Now we've fully implemented that curriculum and it's fully Common Core aligned. And it really emphasizes this explaining your thinking, that kids could get the wrong answer, but if they explain their process and explain, it helps like me as a teacher, instead of just requiring them to do 24 plus 16, to say there are 20, like give them a context to it, that I'm able to give them, see where their thinking is. and where their miscalculation happened, whereas instead of them stacking numbers on top of each other and plugging along in a formula, they get the wrong answer. I can't always figure out, well, where did they have the miscommunication? Whereas when they have a range of strategies, we're able to pinpoint where is the issue. And then they also are able to get partial credit. Like, oh, you just, on your kind of counting on your number line, you by accident started counting one number before. You have all the process, we can see you understand the math, you just made one misunderstanding. So that helps a lot now.
And another focus of the Common Core is collaboration and talking about your work. So if for example you had this in your classroom, you're working with a small group of kids, chances are in talking it over, you would have come to realize that there were 4 students there because the other kids that you're working with, like you work through it together. So you get it and you get, whatever number you got and you talk it over with your partner and he's like, oh, I got here. You can like figure it out together. And so like that process of talking about your work not only reinforces your own learning, but it helps develop your thinking and it helps you learn from other people as well and hearing these other perspectives and how to approach math through that collaboration. Any other thoughts or questions about the second problem? All right, last problem. And so these explanations are longer, so I'm going to choose different slides. But here is one way to compare these 2 boxes. And so you can go through arithmetically, where you are just taking the numbers that they gave you and multiplying it by the number of times they told you to. So I haven't looked at it in a little while, but I think, it's like whatever. Oh, you're finding out the volume of the first cube, and then you're taking these numbers and just increasing them as they said to. So they said that this dimension was 2 times as much, so you gotta plug the 4 in, that one was 3 times as much, etc. And so you figure out the cubic, the volume of the second one, and then compare the volumes of the 2. And so in the end, you can figure out how much clay that holds by comparing the 2 volumes. Valid? Another approach is to do it visually with actually taking the size of the one box and then figuring out how much bigger is that second box. So this lays out, and I'm just going to read it because it's a little bit tricky to read. The second box is 3 times the width and the same length as the first smaller box. So working on the bottom, you can fit 3 smaller boxes into the width of the larger box. Now, I don't anticipate many of you did it this way, like physically, because you don't have items in your hand to measure them out that way. But if you've been in a math classroom lately, you probably see kids are doing this all the time, right? So they're just figuring out exactly how much bigger is the second one than the first one. So once you've got the width accounted for, then the second box is 2 times as high as the smaller one. So you just take that and double it, and now you can visually see, all right, how many units does this hold compared to the smaller one that I made, or the one that we had originally. So you know that this is now 6 times as much because one of your boxes was like this blue, and now the size of it is 6 times as much. So you can again multiply the volume of the first one by 6 to get the volume of the second one.
So I see how that came about, but I would think that a kid, unless they had this box in front of them, it might be hard to visualize that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The kids are using
But on the test, do they use?
Are they drawing though? I think they're drawing.
But keep in mind also, Common Core or math is not the test.
Yeah.
So maybe this question wouldn't show up on a test, but this is a Common Core question that kids would have. And so this could be a great classroom activity, like a great question for the classroom. Marianne, do you want to add or ask a question?
No, I was just saying, I think they're drawing, when they do little drawings about this.
Yeah, so you can use.
And one thing is that this could be one concept that's being used that later, assume because they have this conceptual understanding, is going to help them solve more complicated problems. It could be used down the road, but that's something like that Kaisa and Barbara are going to work with teachers is why am I teaching it this way now? And it might be because it's going to help them later with some of the more complex concepts to truly understand what that number means.
Exactly, so what happens is that if we give the way children develop their mathematical understanding, they go from a concrete physical object to and once they're able to demonstrate physically in front of the model, so you'll see in the K1, 2 years, kids are literally drawing exactly what's in the problems. And that, by them doing that, it looks tedious. I'm sure, like, I always go back to this New York Times article that came out this summer of someone grappling with their second graders' homework. And I saw the picture, I'm like, okay, I know that exact homework, I teach in Unit 3. And I know that parents get frustrated because they're like, why is my child drawing this ridiculous number of circles to represent the problem? Yeah, it looks ridiculous, but what's happening is that they're actually understanding what's happening. So then by directly modeling the problems like this in the beginning phases of their understanding, helps them to then understand, well, why does the algorithm work? Because I know for years, like, I learned how to add and subtract using regrouping. I had no idea, okay, carry one. Well, what does carry one mean? That our kids now are, with investigations, are going to be able to, so I teach second grade, and it's not till 5th grade that we teach them the standard algorithm to regroup. So they're using number strategies, they're first directly modeling, then they're using a number line, they're using a hundreds chart. So they're actually developing that number set that Chris has brought up. So while this looks tedious, having them do this first helps them to understand, well, why does it, when I learn those formulas, why do the formulas work? And they are able to also be more creative thinkers and kind of, in a way, sometimes come up with the formulas on their own without being explicitly told, this is the formula used for this type of problem. They've developed the formula themselves based on their visual representations they've done in the earlier years.
So I just want to say that it would be really helpful if, like, the way they get there, because it's very different methodologies. And I feel that I might be sort of tainting the way they should be doing it. And it's really frustrating for both of us. So I would say, like, whatever handouts or whatever process or visual or whatever, it'd be really nice if it came home so that we could sort of step back and, like, kind of, because we're all really smart, we could all figure this out. We all figured it out right now, but
so that's the perfect pitch for what we're going to be doing in January and February is that we're going to be having a K-1-2 math night and then a 3-4-5 math night where we're going to do exactly that. We're going to go through the crux of what does a third grader learn in math. And here are each grade has a core concept that they return to over and over again throughout the year. So in second grade, for example, we go back to addition and subtraction 3 to 4 times throughout the school year, each time building on the strategies. 4th grade, you go do multiplication. 5th grade, do fractions. That you're doing much more building upon itself that we want to, at that math night, explain to parents, like, this is what the 4th grade does, here's are the strategies you're going to see, and give you some hands-on materials, like handouts and things, so you have some examples to look at.
I just think it would be helpful if it was a little bit more real time as they come home with this stuff. So, I mean, I know the other day my son came home and it was subtraction and there was borrowing involved, and I was like, this is how we do it. And he figured it out, but I'm sure it's definitely not the way you guys are teaching it.
I mean, what I was gonna say before is exactly what you just said, so much more eloquently about understanding where it all comes from. And if you never struggle, like, most people I know tell me they can't stand this new math or they hate this new math. I love this new math because I hated math after 7th grade. And this makes so much sense to me. But when my kids come home, and my little one's too little, but when Lena would come home with it, I felt like I had this knowledge that other people didn't have because I had been here and I knew the curriculum, and I would have to say to my husband, no, this is not the way they learn it. This is how they learn it, because he would just want to show her the formula or whatever. So I just want to echo what you're saying, that I think, I had a window into the school because I had spent, so much time here, but I think a lot of parents, when their kids are coming home, they know the formula for volume, or even at a much lower level, the whole borrowing, carrying, regrouping thing. That's where I remember it first happening when she talked about regrouping. My husband had no idea what she was talking about and wanted to, and it did get to a point where she realized, oh, it's the same thing as regrouping. But I think for the parents of the younger kids, like in K-1-2, having something like that, like what Cindy's saying, either earlier or coming home in real time, almost like textbooky, something we could refer to, so you understand the concepts like this, might be really helpful for the parents who are really struggling with how to support their kids in this.
So I'm not saying that the math events in like after the holiday is a bad idea. I just think like I'm collecting all this in one night and like, okay, well, where does it go in the work of the year? So it'd be really nice to be able to just sync it up with whatever's coming home.
Yeah, and that's what I tell the kids often. I was like, I wish someone, because I was the same with you, after 7th grade, forget about math for me. And now my parents get a kick out of it. I say math's my favorite thing to teach. When they're like,
Well, the things that are hard for you to learn are often the things you're best at teaching.
And the only hesitation I have, and I know it's different in very young grades, but it also, there is a lot of math phobia out there, and I don't want parents to feel like they're responsible for teaching this to their children. So I understand what you're saying, especially in the early grades, but I also.
You know?
Yeah, and like you would welcome that, but some other people might be very, very overwhelmed by getting like
So
the
maybe
scope and
something we could
sequence.
access online, like a link.
Yeah, we'll definitely
look
look
at, and there's definitely some great resources that come with the investigations curriculum that I know in past when I've had parents who are like, what do you do?
Because they don't get a book, so it might be helpful.
So I definitely think something that we could all talk about as the math team to figure out some resources to give
I'd be
you.
more than happy if you give me everything electronic or even a piece of paper. I'll just throw it through a scanner and I will upload it for all of you people. I don't care. It's just the paper and the fact that my kid loses half of her stuff. It'd be really nice if things were available online. But I wouldn't say that like when kids come home and they're working through these things and they have questions, it's nice to refer to that so that you can go, okay, I think I can answer this question. And if they can't, they can just say, well, go back to your teacher.
I want to make sure we get to these.
We do do a lot, I don't know if this, I go back to my teacher every grade since kindergarten, we focus my kids continually, and say, you know, in 4th grade this year, math has been quite a challenge. And I, you know, email the teacher and we go back and we say, we really didn't get it, here's the work we did. And then I kind of step out of it a little bit, because I think that for her to succeed, that I have to step out. I'm there to support her, and I'm gonna sit next to her when she's crying, and I'm gonna put my arm around her and tell her it's okay. If you don't bring your homework in finished, you are not gonna get in trouble, that it's okay. The idea of homework is to see where you are. It is not to, you know, beat you down at the end of your day and make you feel inadequate. So if you don't have it, it's okay. Let's let her say we didn't get it and go back to it. And also, I do say that Khan Academy, which definitely does a lot of this kind of stuff, if you want to look at it with her, it's going to help you, because I love that guy. I love the way he teaches, the way he writes this stuff out in different colored things on your tiny kids. Khan Academy page. Yeah. It's a free website this guy does, but I think he seems to explain things.
They use it a lot in middle school. In 6th grade, there is a.
Right, we started using it really, yeah.
Yeah, so I want to echo Sarah.
Yeah, there's a couple of
Do you have a
people here
question?
that.
Okay, I've seen your hand up for a while. Do you want to ask a question?
No, I think I see where you're going. For me, I'm glad you said this because I have a reading man phobia. Like as soon as you said it, I was just like, I don't want to do it. Like I was sitting here reading and I was like doing it. As soon as you said do it, I was just like, no. I'm not touching it. But I found myself like more so with my son because he came in kindergarten and just seemed like after like this year, 3rd grade. Well, he's in 4th grade, and the 3rd grade just hit me. I was like, why am I sitting here arguing with a 3rd grader about homework? I'm like, put this here. I'm telling you, I can't explain it, but if you do it like this, and I found myself getting frustrated or looking online, grabbing out my phone and looking on YouTube, like, you know, how do you do this? But it was very, very, very frustrating. And I don't know if this is an option, but I know for me, I'm a hands-on. I am definitely like a hands-on learner. You give me a sheet of paper and tell me to follow stuff, I will not get it. But if I see it, I can learn it visually. As the students are learning it, can it be recorded, or can the teacher record it so that you can actually see it, opposed to trying to list the steps or trying to find a way to get to the answer that way? Is that a possibility?
I think it's certainly an option. As you can see, we're still, it's not like everything's at our fingertips about the best way to educate parents about this. We're becoming better as the teachers themselves become familiar with the curriculum and the Common Core. I think that's a good idea.
It's almost like you have to unlearn the way you.
Yes.
Yeah.
But my
But
thing
we
is,
have to unlearn, right? Because we don't learn that way, but the kids are approaching it this way. So this is what I've been thinking as you guys have been speaking, this whole phobia. A lot of adults have some sort of math phobia because we got to a point where we couldn't remember which formula to plug in, or we didn't know, or it just became so overwhelming because there was so much, and we hadn't built up this context and this understanding of where these formulas come from and why they're used. But kids are being taught now, and it's starting really young, and they're developing this context and this intuition. So as it gets more and more complicated, it's been building, and they shouldn't have these same fears because they're writing it, from year to year and year, the way it builds, their development is so much deeper that it should carry them further.
and that's my important message. I don't feel like there's a lot for parents and children to talk about and deal with and worry about, and I think that the whole issue with Common Core and everything else can be the fact that homework is overemphasized. And I don't think, again, it's the teacher's job to make sure that your child is understanding and getting it corrected. I'm not saying, I know every parent in here is obviously very hands-on, but I also think that if it's causing that much angst between you and your child, that's when it's like, hey teacher, she's really confused at home and it's making us argue, like help us out.
Yeah,
Because
from a teacher perspective, like I would much rather have you tell me I don't understand what you're doing and I can spend that time to talk to you specifically, or to be like, hey, like I tell my kids when we do story problems, I say, if your parents, tonight you go home and you do this problem and your parents try and show you a strategy you've never seen me do in class, tell them, Teacher Kaisa says I can't do it this way, I have to use
she's
this whole
causing
strategy.
arguments.
So I'm doing it, but let them say that, because I want them to.
So I'm gonna email
And I'm
you the
confused.
next 3-hour meltdown on that.
That sounds good. And I think
Video it,
If I
record
knew-
it.
Video it
And I think it could kill any teacher. If they knew there was a 3-hour meltdown.
Okay, I need a list of definitions.
So
So there
there's
are words that are being used in the homework assignments that aren't defined on the internet.
1 second, can I just say, Chloe's been having her hand raised for a while, so.
Okay, just basically to add to what they say, I mean, they have the same issue at home, like they do their homework, especially her. She doesn't know what to do, what to show the daughter. She shows her way, her daughter say, it's not that way, and then, they spend time fighting about it. And she just wants to know if there's any way that she can actually see all the things like that. And she can, go home and, and actually apply with the way. I guess everybody's having the same issue.
Yes. I want you to hear what I'm saying too. Yes, Kaisa has ideas, she's just talking about it, but I want you to hear, too, if it's a struggle, please let the teacher know. Because they could either have something very readily available or say, don't worry about it.
we don't want homework to escape time for them to feel successful and practice, and it's really causing that much angst and hardship. Then I always find it very helpful to find out who's struggling with it at home, because it also informs my practice, that if I am getting homework back that's fully completed all correctly, it makes us think, oh, they probably know what they're doing, but if they're not understanding it, it helps us. So homework should always, if your teacher tells you it should take X amount of time and you are spending triple the amount of time, shut it down and say, well, do something fun, go do something that takes break, and tell us, because every teacher, we all have different resources that we can hand off to you. More than I know many teachers are more than happy to sit down and be like, here's how we're teaching it in the classroom. Because homework, like Kristen said, should not be.
So Ashley's just shaking her
My
head.
child's been told so many times that he already knows how to do it, that this prompts a meltdown. So, I mean,
By who?
my
Just like,
teacher,
the teacher said you already know how to do this, or already got it.
where maybe he was absent one day, that certainly implicates one time he was absent, he was told he knows how to do it, but he was absent. So I can't help him because the words that are used in the worksheet aren't able to be found on the internet for me to find a YouTube video or something else to help them. I mean, what do you do? So now I email you guys.
Well, I think that maybe there's a way that it could be, I mean, I can be fortunate, it's always been sort of said to me that, the homework, if it's coming
wrong and not completed, that's what the teacher wants to see. Because, you know, I have a daughter that doesn't get it over and over again from year to year to year. She will get it, so to hear that you should know this is not going to help her, because she's gonna cry, and so I mean, that might be a different issue, a different meeting we need to have, but is there a way that we can kind of continue through our math grades, let our parents know that really we sincerely mean, and I don't know if this is across the board, with every teacher I've had, but if it's causing the meltdown, I mean, like my daughter doesn't want to put it in not finished, but then she was, no, she didn't.
So that's more-
But I continue, and I said, their teacher, you know, please remind her that it's perfectly okay, and that she can quietly get the homework, and we have to have the ways to allow her not to feel self-conscious about not knowing it still.
I think we,
But I mean, I spend a lot, I mean, I think I.
well, I'm just gonna piggyback off of Sarah's comment, and that is to try to encourage your kids to feel comfortable about going to any of their teachers, not even just math, and saying, I need help, can you teach me? Because that was a big leap for us. And when I tell Giselle to go talk to her teacher, she comes back and she totally gets it. So I think it's a really good way to make them, own it, and then make them feel okay that they don't finish it and that they don't understand it at first.
And I'm sure there's different parents have different experiences with different teachers. So I'm saying as principal, you have to try to help get everybody in line with the same philosophy. If you feel like you're not getting that kind of response from the teacher, and it's not really it doesn't have to be a title style thing, it's just this is what we're struggling, and this is what you said, and this isn't my experience. Can you help us figure out? And I'm not gonna go, teacher, you're in trouble, and this is what Ashley, Harry's mom said. So I'm not but it's gonna be problem solving, because again, we have teachers that have been teaching a really long time that learn this way, or that really think homework is the most important thing in the world. And that's my role to kind of go get into those situations and help them with it. Or if it's really stressful, you can talk to the counselor. You might be able to, in less of a principal kind of way, kind of figure out what's going on. And maybe either between teacher, parent, child.
I want to get that question in a minute. This isn't the place to ask this question, later because I came in late, but I'm wondering, kind of backing up a little bit, wondering why we're making this change, and has this been in place long enough to know that this is more effective than the older methods. I grew up in Japan, and math there is much better than here, and they just do what's now the old method. Are we? If you take a look at the back of the sheet, I think it's the first resource on there is a video from. No, not the first one. Teaching Channel, the third one. Okay. There are two videos there, one for English language arts and one for math. And they really talk about, actually any of these first three ones, will talk about why and how Common Core was developed. And so it was developed based on international measures. So really seeing how students in other countries are performing and frankly outperforming Americans. So this methodology is much more based on what's being successful internationally. So that's part of the first impetus. And then there's a second part to your question. Oh, if we know it's more effective. And so what we're seeing is previously the way students were taught and tested was the results of their tests, and this is what Principal Christian was saying earlier about how there's been a shift from who's being labeled proficient, suddenly these things have shifted. And the measures are measuring college and career readiness. So it's saying when how close are you to being on track to being able to succeed in college? And it's been determined that proficient, according to old tests, was not at all aligned to what kids had to do in college. And so kids were getting to college, and more students than previously, and we're talking about previous generations or decades, were requiring remedial courses to understand how to take notes and read college level texts and do college level math. So now this shift is preparing kids from kindergarten on up to be ready for the rigor of college, to be ready to enter the workforce by developing some of these mathematical approaches. And so yes, in the end, it will actually get kids more ready. So what we're learning now is the kids were not, if they were marked proficient, they weren't actually proficient. And so the shift has come, where now, when kids are going to be labeled proficient, they are actually on track to being ready for college.
You know that, or that's yet to be?
Yes, it's been like it's only been in its full implementation for a few years. So they took, like Chris is saying, they backward plan. They said, what are the skills that you need to be successful in college or in a career, and backwards plan. So what we're going to see is the first couple of what we've experienced this year, the test changing, is that we are seeing a dip in scores because it's going to take, so a child who's in 7th grade didn't have K through 6 of the new Common Core standards, so we're having to go, that grade kind of has to go and teach all the other things. So we're starting to see each year that we're in the Common Core, we're going to see growth. Again, we don't know, like we're only in, say 2? Or like, yeah, what would the K for? It depends on, yeah, it's a handful of years, so we don't know yet. But they're hoping that what they've also done is they've changed, so when Kristen and I were talking before this, was if you look at the old Pennsylvania state standards, there would be a million different skills 2nd grade would have to learn. We've now gone from shifting the skills that they have to cover like 15 skills to making it smaller number of skills, but they're going much deeper in it. So they're getting that, like how you're seeing in these problems, like what we probably, like what I remember seeing in school would be like, here's the ratio you need to figure it out. Now it's like, figure out all these deeper things. The kids are going deeper into the standards, so the intention is that because we're going deeper into skills, kids will be more prepared for the future.
How much testing is there? I mean, I've got kindergarten, so I don't know, like, you mentioned days of tests, like, and starting in kindergarten, how much testing are they gonna have?
You mean for
Like
yes,
standards, yeah.
I mean, in third, there's usually in April, there's a week for ELA and a week for math. We spread it, but you can do it. We could give 3 subtests in one day if we wanted. We tend to do like, so it's not the whole day. It tends to be 9 to 11 on each of those days, as opposed to having them sit for 8 hours.
But that's state mandated.
Yes, that is not our choice. I mean, in 8th grade, they're taking reading, math, writing, and science. Yeah, 4th grade. Oh, actually, yeah.
I see that we are approaching written.
Yeah.
We are approaching negative. Any final questions or thoughts?
This is it.
So what we are planning to, so teacher Barb and I are the math lead teachers for the lower school, and what we were planning on doing, I don't remember the dates off the top of my head, but they'll be on the website, and then we'll have flyers at conferences that we're going to
January.
And it's like the week after Martin Luther King, I think on a Wednesday, we're doing the K2 one. So it'll be kind of going in, really delving into what is the K2 investigations curriculum, like how are we meeting the Common Core, and also then breaking up into grade groups and really talking specifically, giving you some strategies to help support your child, and doing the same thing in February for 3, 4, and 5. So we'll be holding those after school. I believe it's the Wednesday after Martin Luther King, and then the Wednesday after President's Day.
January 20th for K2 and February 17th for K2.
And so we'll kind of go dig deeper into
February 17th.
So we'll be digging deeper into all of kind of this. Krista gave us such a great overview of what kind of the big shift in math, and then we'll give you now the grade specific for the K-5 little ones.
So before we close out, just a quick feedback from me. I get, like, we were talking tonight to help you better understand the Common Core. And thumbs up, thumbs down, in the middle if you feel like you better understand the Common Core. Thank you.
Thank you.